Welcome to Your Moment with Miguel Ramirez.
Hello, and welcome to Your Moment. My name is Miguel Ramirez, and on today's episode, I'm going to be inviting Raul Chavez. Raul Chavez has written a book, Childhood Indians, Television, Film, and Sustaining the White Subconscious. And in today's interview, we touch on the topic of racism, racism from the past versus racism today. My interview with Raul Chavez.
In the 70s, you start to see a movement towards creating Indians that look more, again, authentic in costume. But in character, they're still the same Indians that I, as a white America, want to believe exist today. They're submissive, they're backwards, uneducated. Those things allow me as an American to feel comfortable with the current status of indigenous peoples throughout the country, whether it be on the res, whether it be the urban, and dealing with poverty, dealing with, the poor diets, the high level of diabetes, alcoholism, suicide rate on the res. All these things don't seem as bad. It doesn't put me as an American in a position of responsibility. That's just the Indians. That's just how they are. And it's not true. Society has created, this type of experience through the exploitation of indigenous peoples, through the denial of their own sovereignty, the education system that for some 3-4 generations forcibly took children out of the houses of loving families and sent them off to these boarding schools where, children died, where children's cultures were taken away from them forcibly through corporal punishment. And there's no guilt. I see it. I know it because I see it on film. This is how Indians are. So how should I feel guilty about how they live today? And that's part of the long-standing results. That's what the film itself doesn't do. It's how we remember the films. And so even films that took place in the 1940s, 50s, 60s that we might be able to watch today on YouTube or Netflix or something. Wow, I didn't realize Indians live like this. Well, no, they don't. They never did. They didn't then. They don't now. One of the things that I try to emphasize with my Chicano and Native American history students is that to try and understand the experience of indigenous peoples, of Chicanos, we need to understand that our story is about removing the past to create a path where we can do things on our own. And a lot of these films, what they help to hold on to, what they help to maintain, is this idea that brown people need white men. And what I try to tell my students is that, no, what indigenous people, what Chicanos want is your support. Let us be who we are, but don't hold my hand. Do not hold my hand and take me to that promised land that you are taking me towards, that you are giving me. Don't give me anything. I have a past. I have a past that connects me to this world, this land. And my ancestors continue to guide me. They continue to support my existence here in this world. I don't need you. I don't want you. Let me be. I don't want that to, not in an angry way. It's more about my white subconscious theory comes from the idea that over the course of American history, that as a people who are born out of colonialism, as a country that is founded on the principles of white supremacy, we have been forced to create these myths and legends that are part of our history that allow us to see brown people as inferior. And so what this colonizer mentality, as I call it, does is it makes us strive to hold on to that position of power where brown people still look up. And in an era, especially today, with all of the divisiveness that permeates American society, and sometimes it's hard for people who call themselves liberals to distance themselves from some of those stereotypes and biases about brown people. And as brown people, they need the guidance of whites. That's what whites want to believe, and that's not true. We're living a transition of sorts through our global experience. For over 400 years, we lived an existence as brown people and white people where through colonialism, through imperialism, white privilege was the norm. After World War II, the dynamics change as we come to realize that the exploitation of brown people by whites is wrong. But it's easier to say it's wrong than to actually try to do something about that. And so the transition is from going to a society of white privilege to one in which we practice equality for all at the expense of white privilege. And as a people, you almost have the, I'm not sure if I like that mindset of white people. White America likes its privilege, even though it doesn't realize that it's privilege at the expense of brown. And indigenous peoples are at the forefront of that experience. Where do we live? That's Indian country. Well, you know what? I have to kind of issue a disclaimer right now, and that is that I've been biting my tongue these first few minutes of this interview as I try to maintain a political correctness to the way I'm recognizing, the peoples involved. The chair of my department one time complained that I made people feel uncomfortable because I used language that was raw, that was more, again, open to what the situation demanded. And so I've always felt that the idea of being politically correct to protect people's feelings only exacerbates the problem. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about society, when we talk about peoples, and I think I've already started subconsciously saying it, but it's about understanding that whiteness as a mindset is at the core of many of our problems. And so that I need to just say white people rather than society, because it's true. We had a discussion about the question of slavery and especially with all the conflict going on right now with the Confederate statues and the idea that so what was the war about? And it was about maintaining people as property, and who did it? White people. It was no one. You want to be politically correct, you can say plantation owners. You want to maybe generalize a little bit more of Southern plantation owners, but they were white. And that's important. We need to be able to understand those things, and we need to understand the differences between indigenous peoples and those that have sought to, disenfranchise them. And it's not the government alone. It's those people who, from the onset believed that they held a certain privilege that the Indian prevented them from taking advantage of, and that is their whiteness. And as Americans, this country belongs to us, is that mindset. Stop with the denial. Stop with the hiding the real feelings.
Well, that's going to wrap up today's episode. I'd like to thank Raul Chavez for stopping by. Again, his book, Childhood Indians, Television, Film, and Sustaining the White Subconscious. I'd like to thank you for listening, and have a good day.
Stay up to date with news, interviews, and upcoming show episodes by following Your Moment with Miguel Ramirez on Spreaker.com.